Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Judy WTF here. And thank you so much for those who hung on, for bearing with technical difficulties. Just give me a thumbs up or something that the technical difficulties have been solved. All okay? Is everything good on your end? Okay, thank you so much. All right, so I hope that we have some listeners left after a long pause, and I'll just go into the topic. And the topic is why traditional therapy doesn't work for healing from narcissistic abuse. So let me give you a little bit of a history about me and my work. And I've been in the profession for a few decades, believe it or not. And what I found was that originally I was trained to do things that I don't do any longer, or I do in a different way, or very minimally so. And one of those things that I was trained to do as an intern was to wait till I established a therapeutic relationship with the client or patient before I would delve into the deeper issues, or wait till those deeper issues emerged through the connection through therapeutic alliance. And that could take weeks, it could take months, and sometimes people never get there because the therapist will not ask the right question. So I've changed all that because I'm not a fan of wasting people's therapeutic time and money. And as many of you know, I now have a mind map that I created that I work with to get people from, through, to, from the wounds of childhood and narcissistic abuse, which we're covering specifically today, through the breakdown on the mind, body, and soul, and then paradigm shift out of the mess into what I call a new way of seeing and a new way of being. So it's imperative that when dealing specifically with narcissistic abuse, or really any kind of childhood wound, that you go to the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is always multi-generational. It always has to do with the blueprint, mother, father, and how they were treated. And then they learned how to treat you. And then it trickles down, of course, to the next generation. And so forgive me if there are technical problems. I see some blinking going on. I hope it goes away and is resolved. Again, thank you so much for bearing with me. I have a lot of information tonight about traditional therapy versus mind map therapy. And one of the things that I have to have in order for me to do my work is a system. And I have to have a map, which is a plan, which gets people from, through, to. And it is so important that people don't just randomly sit there and talk for months and years, that they actually have a plan. So why does it not work to treat narcissistic abuse with talk therapy? Okay, so I think you're getting some of my points here. Number one, usually a therapist has no plan other than just get to know you, talk to you, develop a therapeutic relationship, engender trust, create a safe, confidential space. And those are all very good things and very important things. And I do that in my practice as well. It's just that you've got to have a plan. So one of the things that you need to do when entering therapy is ask your therapist, your psychologist, what is the plan? How am I going to get from, through, to? And if they say something like, well, we'll get to know each other and I'll get to understand you better, and then we'll figure out how to navigate what your goals are and navigate your emotions, that's not enough. That is not a plan. That's just telling you that we're going to get to know each other and we'll figure it out as we go along. Well, I think that is not enough. You have to have a plan. The therapist has to have some sort of plan already figured out before you sit in that therapeutic chair. Now, of course, everyone brings their individual issues to the table, and it's important that the therapist take that into consideration. But there still has to be a plan in place. And so I'm going to go over the plan so everyone is clear on it. And also, I'm going to go over how many sessions we really need to make a therapeutic difference and to establish a psychoeducational process so that not only are you healing, but you're also learning, and you're also learning how to think like a shrink, because it's not good enough that I'm the shrink here. I want you to learn how to see yourself, analyze yourself, self-reflect upon yourself, self-correct upon yourself. These are very important skills that can be taught in the confines of the therapeutic relationship. So here is the plan. I'm going to lay it out for you. It's the mind map plan. It's the Be the Cause mind map plan, which I have established in detail in my book, which you're happy to have a free PDF copy of. But let me go through the plan. So if you see the map, it's divided into 9 sections. And the first 3 represent the past encodings. The middle 3 represent the chaos, defenses, and breakdowns as a result of poor encodings. And the last 3 represent the paradigm shift out of the pain of childhood wounds and into this new way of being and seeing and relating to yourself in the world. So let's detail this out, and then I'm going to apply it to apathy and narcissistic injuries, and why it's so important to have a competent, trained professional to help guide you through recovering from narcissistic abuse. So if you look at panel number 1, you will see the wound. And the wounds of childhood are the following. There is obviously the wound of sexual wounding, there is verbal abuse, there is physical abuse, there's control smothering, there's emotional, physical neglect, and then the narcissistic wound is the wound of apathy. I refer to it as the wound of apathy, which is the wound that is very sadly so a true disconnect, because the parents simply don't have empathy. They don't care enough, or they don't care at all. And this kind of wounding creates a real disconnect. And we'll talk a little more about the effects of that on your psyche. And this particular wound is such that it's multi-generational, so that when you don't hand down to your children a form of empathy and connection, then the children suffer as well, and then they grow up and then they pass down this kind of a detached style to the next generation. Or it can go the other way, and the next generation can end up being massive people pleasers, trying to get the love and nurturance through pleasing, but that doesn't really work. So first of all, I wanted to physically show you the mind map, because I wanted to physically show you the plan. And then we, of course, have to go back and detail into this plan how you reacted to the wounds and how you encoded them and how they broke you down and how you defended against them, and then how to morph out of all the mess. So I think you can see how important the plan is. Now, as a new therapist, an intern back in the day, I was taught to pay attention to developing the therapeutic bond. And as important as that is, I wasn't taught to ask all the questions that are necessary for me to quickly dive into the work. And those questions are, have you been abused? Have you been neglected? Has anybody in your family had alcohol or drug issues? Has anyone in your family neglected you emotionally severely to the point where you felt that you were worthless? These are questions that are really important to ask up front, because if you don't ask them up front, then you're just going to be waiting and waiting and waiting for the patient to develop this trust in you to start revealing things. And why wait? I mean, let's face it, if you go to an MD and you have problems with your body, then you're not going to expect anything less than let's take your blood pressure, let's take a sample of your blood and do a workup there, let's do some x-rays if need be, let's do an EKG. So no doctor, MD, is going to say to you, let's get to know each other and let's develop some form of a trust within the relationship where you will now reveal to me how you're not feeling so well and where the aches and pains are. So can you see how absurd that would be? So why shouldn't it be the case in the therapeutic relationship where you go right in there and ask the right questions? And, you know, I have the privilege of training some young interns right now into the mind map system. And I asked them today, so what's the gold standard in therapeutic intervention? And there were two people in this training session, both of them said cognitive behavioral therapy. So what is cognitive behavioral therapy? It's how things land in the cognition department, your belief system about yourself and the world. And Dr. Albert Ellis created cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's a brilliant kind of therapy in the right context. So let me explain. If you're simply working with cognitions and belief systems, like, let me give you examples. I'm stupid, I'm ugly, I'm a loser, I'm not good enough. These are some cognitive core beliefs that I work with. If you're simply going to be attacking it on a cognitive level, you're not really sourcing the cognitions. And I'll tell you why that's so important. So basically, you're putting the cart before the horse. You're going to the next level when we've got to back up the system. We've got to go to the cause of the matter. So where do these cognitions come from? Did dad call you stupid? Did mom tell you that you're a loser? Did your parents make you feel worthless? So unless you get to the source of the cognition, then you're not really dealing with the depth of the feelings that that caused the injury of the cognitions that are now floating around in your head. And unless we do that, then all we're really doing is proving or disproving or challenging them or dismantling them or leaving out a big part of the picture. And the big part of the picture is who done it. And so who put this in your head? How did that message, which I refer to in my book, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, which you're welcome to a PDF copy of, or you can pick it up at Amazon.com in hard copy version. Unless you go back to the cause of the matter, you're just really manipulating thoughts, changing behaviors, watching thoughts through mindfulness, which is another very big way people work in the psychotherapeutic profession today, or you're teaching deep breathing techniques, or some kind of technique is always involved. Now, nothing wrong with techniques, but again, they have to be in a certain context, and you've got to start from the beginning. You can't go to step number C when you've got to look at step number A. And of course, everyone, this is a call-in show, so please call in. I want to hear about your past therapeutic experiences. I want to hear from you, especially if you have been through any one of the modalities that I've mentioned, behavioral, cognitive, whatever modalities, and they're excellent modalities, except that we've got to connect them back to the original source of the pain. And if we don't do that, then what happens is the pain point is never addressed. It's almost like, let's ignore the fact that your parents put these messages into your head. Let's ignore the sense of anger and shame and guilt and betrayal and human disconnect that it caused. And you can't ignore that. If you're ignoring that, you're really leaving out a major piece of the work. I want to hear from you. I hope that there's some people left in the chat room. Is there a question or two in the chat room that I can answer? I'd be happy to do that. Okay, if not, then I'd rather hear from you. So I would love Collins, and I hope there's some people still left listening to the show and that you didn't give up here. So back to, why is it that traditional therapy doesn't work for healing from narcissistic abuse? Because narcissistic abuse is a result of a system gone wrong. It's a result of a system built on apathy, the I don't care about you wound, or I don't care about you enough, or I'm not connected to you. And if you're not connected to your primary caregiver or caregivers, if there's a mother-infant disconnect, a father-infant disconnect, a family disconnect, well, there is the inception of the wound, and that has to be dealt with and repaired. And if not, then we're over there in cognition land and behavior land. And again, therefore, we're treating symptoms, we're treating thoughts, we're treating things like anxiety or depression or OCD or ADHD or any of these things. And I have a call. Thank you so much for calling in. Hi, you're on the couch with Dr. Judy. What is the name that you'd like me to call you by? You there?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes,
hi.
hello?
Thank you so much for calling in. And what name would you like me to call you?
Letty is fine.
Okay, Letty, thank you. And Letty, what is going on in your life that incentivized you to call about this topic?
Well, actually, first, I want to say thank you for your service, that you work so hard to help us heal and have a better life.
My
I called before. I called almost a year ago.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I live too far where you are, and my family's in different places. And I had been really speaking about you and how we really need the services that you provide.
Okay.
But we haven't been able to do that. Moving forward, I listen to your shows, and I try to, implement. I can't say try to do it all, it's too much, but try to take baby steps. But the last time that I called, I had shared how I had been parentified and then married a husband who, there was always just something, it was always just so much work to keep him happy, to keep him comfortable.
Are you talking about your husband? Your husband?
Yeah, growing up, I grew up in a lot of dysfunction, a lot of abuse. Then when I got married, well, he wasn't abusive, like, say, directly, like physically or cursing, but just very passive-aggressive. He punished me when, by ignoring me for days, when I contested to something.
Yes.
But anyway, so I did go to some counseling. I tried a few counselors. And, I just wouldn't continue to go because I always walked away feeling like they didn't understand my position. Like, based on the things that they would tell me or suggest, I would think, like, no, they're not getting it.
Well, unfortunately, right? Okay. And I'm sorry that was your experience, because I'm sure you went in there optimistic and bearing your soul and paying good money for the time. And unfortunately, people are not trained in going to the cause. And if they are, they're usually psychoanalytic in nature, which is how I think. And I love the psychoanalytic way of thinking. It's just that true psychoanalysis takes a very, very long time. and it peels away layers and layers of the onion until you work through the transference, which is the projection of the patient on the therapist. And you have to work through all of these levels, and it could take months and years. And the mind map is psychoanalytic in nature, but I've collapsed it into a very easy to follow system so that you don't have to spend months and years, and we don't have to wait to go through all that transference. You know how to contact me, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I do. I have your info.
I'd love to hear from you. So you mentioned that you're in a marriage, yes?
Well, I'm divorced now, and I'm just healing from the situation. But even after we're married, because we have a child, I'm not gonna go into what he's done, but just like a few months, like 5 months ago, he just did something so extreme that I was just thinking, oh my God. And it's sort of like down on me. Like I've always kind of been like, oh my gosh, he's narcissistic, or oh my gosh, he's just a mess. But that day I thought, oh my God, this is a sickness. He's sick. Like,
yes.
The thinking is just so incredibly twisted that it wouldn't matter how many minutes and hours and months I took into forming the perfect, reasonable presentation to something that we need to work with. It doesn't matter how it would be posed. He will never see it because his thinking is sick. And sometimes me, like on the other side, I would think, well, maybe I just need to try harder, which at counseling is sort of something where you're told, well, can you try this, maybe this? And I'm thinking, I've tried it all. Like, it isn't about me. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong,
Okay, well, that's a very important realization. Of course, we all have a part in it, and maybe your part is that you were groomed to choose somebody like that, because when parents disconnect from us and don't show us a connection and a love and a family structure, then we have a low bar, and then we go picking people who also ignore us or also hurt our feelings or also physically, whatever it is that you're used to, now you invite into your life. And it's not such a big surprise that you end up with a similar low bar person, if you will. Okay. And then when you start growing and opening your eyes, then you think, this is not okay. But, as children, that's all we know. So it's okay as far as we're concerned, because this is the norm. This is the family norm. So you're correct that when you go into traditional therapy, and this is the most interesting look I see on patients' face when I say to them, so have you been in therapy? Yes, I've been in therapy. What did you learn in your therapy? And I get a blank stare. Blank stare. Like, really? How long were you in therapy? Oh, I was in therapy for a couple of years. What did you learn in your therapy? I learned that I'm kind of codependent. I learned that I have to have better boundaries. Really? 2 years into therapy, and that's all you learned? Okay, so in my books, unacceptable. Okay, so if you're not learning things like, how did this happen? Who injured you? What was the reaction in your body from the injury? How did you store that information? What core beliefs you have? How did that take you down? How did you defend against it? How did you repeat what I call the Freud cycle of repetition? Okay, if you're not learning all of these things, then how are you going to prevent yourself from getting into the same mess in the future?
Yeah, exactly. And and it's, when I was listening to this show and maybe some others, and just getting educated and things that you mention or that I hear now when I'm listening to a couple of different tubers that I follow, and I'm just like sort of pinpointing, like, oh my God, that, and oh my God, this, and so then I realized that I had a very high tolerance to disrespect, and it just seemed normal, like it was okay because I just need to keep trying to be nice, and then maybe the people around me who are narcissistic, they will get it, and they will be loved, and then they'll want to love me and I won't have to work so hard. But that's just never going to happen because
No.
this is who they are, you know? And then, so just, I'm just so grateful that I ran into your, your YouTube program because, and then sometimes when it's you and the other man, your partner, and you guys are going back and forth, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, yeah, they do this, and yeah, they do that, and yeah, that's not okay. And so I get some kind of validation that it's not me being difficult, because like these people, like my dad was like that, and so they always will say, oh, you know what, you're just making it big. You're making a problem. This is not a big deal, and then they
Right,
just change the conversation.
Right.
Yeah, and so they just so then it all becomes about me. Like, we're not okay because you're just a mess, and if you didn't complain, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I've been not for maybe weeks or months, and finally I say something just too much, and so it all becomes about something. But like I said, as I was listening to you guys' program and talk, and then I get validation that I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not making up things in my head, and I'm not just being difficult. Like, they are doing things that are inappropriate, and I don't have to accept it.
You don't have to accept it, and as I say,
I don't know if we got cut off.
I can hear you.
We had a lot of static, so
okay, maybe hopefully it's clearing up. The way
I don't know. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. So the way I see it is, we're not crazy. We're made crazy. We're made crazy. Okay. And the system makes us crazy. And so when we pull out of the crazy system, we can heal. If we buy into the crazy system, we just think that we're wrong, we're bad, it's all our fault. If we change, if only we can be more loving, be more patient, be more this, be more that, everything's going to change. However, you can't change someone who has a wall around them. And we're talking about narcissism. Narcissism is it's based on a defense mechanism. So when you've been injured by your family of origin, if you've been spoiled to death and then demeaned and devalued and destroyed, if you've been emotionally neglected, these are the things that lead to narcissism. So imagine your parents are pumping you up.
I was listening, but you cut off again. There's like
the status.
I don't know if it's the mic or.
Okay, hopefully.
But I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay, I'll just continue the thought, and hopefully you can catch it later. But see, how is narcissism formed? It's formed from a disconnect. And one of the ways it's formed is by spoiling a child rotten, overindulging them, and they're not earning the overindulgence. So then they're put up on a pedestal. Now they feel grandiose. They haven't done a damn thing to earn this grandiosity. And then if they disappoint the parents, chop, chop, chop. They get chopped down, demeaned, devalued, destroyed. So they're bouncing around. They're going from high to low, low to high, and they don't have a solid core sense of self established because they're not earning growth. They're not getting mirroring and attunement from the parents. And so this is all non-existent. And so there's no real solid sense of self that is established. And as one of my patients put it, he says, I feel like a house of cards, and underneath this house of cards is an empty shell, and I'm just so scared that people are going to discover it. And then
do you love Gantt charts?
Can you hear me now? Okay, so I'm just going to keep talking because I know we don't have a good connection, and I'm so sorry again for all the technical difficulties tonight. But I just want to put some information out there that in order to work with narcissistic abuse, you need to work with somebody who understands narcissism, where it stems from, how people defend against it, the multi-generational transmission process of psychopathology to the next generation, and somebody that's worked the system so that they're not just blind leading the blind, because a patient is coming to you for direction. And I know that there's such brilliant YouTubes out there. I watch them myself, and people are very, very intelligent and they're great diagnosticians. It's just that I haven't heard much of a plan. So people can rattle away, and these are signs of narcissistic abuse. And if you hear these sentences, then, run, or don't date somebody who behaves this and this and this way. All of this is great information, but, information is not enough to heal. Okay, I want to say that again. Just because you've got a lot of facts and theories and examples and behavioral examples and so on doesn't really offer you a system of healing. And in order for you to truly heal from this, you have to go way down deep into these childhood wounds and address them, and address all the layers of pain that it brings up. And again, we don't do this for months and years of psychoanalysis, because most people don't have the patience and the time and the money to do it, which is why the mind map is a very, very, if you will, an elegant plan that is really well thought out, because I did a lot of the thinking through so that you don't have to spend all of that time. And another piece of research that I came across is that most therapies, when effective, are done in anywhere from 10 to 20 sessions. So your bang for the buck is usually in the first 10, 20 sessions, and 10 sessions is the length of the mind map system. And that's where you really lay down foundationally all of these aspects that I described. And then follow-up would be really ingraining it into the lifestyle, and then using the mind map philosophy to live life and to hone your communication skills, and then moving forward to transmit this healing to other people. And of course, choosing growth partners, because once you have formed a solid core sense of self with good boundaries and good judgment, and you know how to vet people, and you've dealt with all of your feelings of anger and betrayal and shame and guilt and all of that nasty stuff that we have to deal with. We can't just cover them up with behavioral techniques or deep breathing techniques or only medication, which, if appropriate, of course, help yourself to medication if you're jumping out of your skin from anxiety or depression, but let that not be your only tool for healing. And I think we have another call. Thank you so much for calling in. Hello?
Hi, Dr. Judy.
Oh, hi. And what name would you like me to call you?
My name is Barry.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for calling in.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. So I am really appreciating this topic, and I'd like to share my experience. I found that I did extensive dialectical behavior therapy, which was it's a great therapy, but I did find the same problem or challenge in that the addressing of the root cause of the origin story of the trauma of the abuse was only lightly addressed, simply to note that it happened, and then the focus was to move off of focusing on that and move into changing behaviors. Mm-hmm. And it left it sort of sitting there, and the thinking, as I recall, was there's nothing that can be done about it. We don't want to spend a lot of time dwelling in that. We want to move forward and, be working on how we can get along now and improve how things are where we are here. And it did just leave that wound sitting there, and it required going back and doing that work, like your mind map therapy, to uncover the story and get some more insight into the whys of the behaviors, why they were there, and why they were manifesting.
And I really appreciate you sharing this, because DBT and I hear great things about DBT, but you see, it's all in context. If you look at my mind map, we do cognitive behavioral therapy, but only in relationship to the cause of the cognition. You see, so you got to connect the dots, because then, as you said, and thank you for saying it this way, it just leaves the wound just kind of hanging there. And I don't know why clinicians run from the nasties. It's like, come on, please, let's address the painful stuff. Let's not just run away from it and say, well, the past is the past, and I'm sorry that happened to you, and we've got to deal in the here and now. From my philosophy, you've got to go in before you get out. You've got to go backwards before you go forwards. And so sometimes people who are life coaches will refer people to me because they'll say, well, my patient can't progress forward. I think they need to dig around a little bit deeper into the past. And then it's true, they've got to address the root cause, and that's why they're not moving forward. So you see, order is important, very important. You can't just go jumping around the mind map and have panel 7, light and synergy and paradigm shift. You got to go step by step. And, so I really appreciate that you did this great work with DBT, but it didn't touch upon the most important aspect, which is, why are you emotionally dysregulated? Attachment theory. Thank you very much, Dr. John Bowlby, because you're the one who taught me, right? That if you don't have secure attachment, then you're going to go into anxious attachment or some kind of a avoidant attachment or some sort of a what do they call it, where it's just irregular attachment. Okay, so something's going to be disconnected there, and you just can't go jumping around to the thoughts and the behaviors, because the thoughts and the behaviors are the outcome of the cause. Okay, the outcome.
Yes, exactly. The
right?
outcome.
The outcome of the cause. So I've spent the last several months carefully writing the script for a new video that I'm releasing as soon as I get it all edited. And this time I'm going to have a great big hand in the editing process, because I want to make sure that all my points come across. And this video that I'm going to be releasing is called Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And it's a complete plan from panel 1 through 9. It's actually a 9-panel process, healing from narcissistic abuse, going very deep into the wound of apathy. That's why I'm really, really putting my attention on the wound of apathy, because look, we've all been subject to some sort of abuse or neglect, either some kind of emotional abuse or slapped around or name called, or something's always happening in people's lives. However, when we are really not cared about, when our parents lack what I call the empathy chip, okay, they just don't have the connectivity to feel your pain. And I talk about it in the video. When you don't have the connectivity to feel the pain, then you can keep causing pain over and over again, because you don't feel the impact of your words and actions on other people. So, for example, if I don't feel anything, I could treat you however I want. I don't feel anything. If I hurt your feelings, I don't care. If I hurt you physically, okay, get over it. Okay, so you see the problem with that is this doesn't make for interconnection here. On the contrary, so we've got to go back to where that disconnect happened. So since then, have you been addressing the root cause?
Well, yeah. What happened, interestingly for me, was that I did 2.5 years of DBT, and then I graduated, essentially. And then after I had some brain injuries, I ended up in a lot of I hadn't really healed the root cause. And then brain injuries, I regressed and I ended up going back, and I was asked to leave because with brain injuries to the temporal lobes, I became a little bit it became more difficult to regulate my mood. And I ended my last day sitting across from my therapist with her saying, most people come in here and they appreciate the suggestions I'm giving them for what skills they can use and things. And I said, therapist, you've known me for a long time, and I know all of this stuff. I simply can't do them because you're just asking me to behave, but it's not getting to the reason why. Why do I have to behave?
Right.
What is going on with me that I'm manifesting this thing that I need to have skills so that I can behave and regulate myself to interact with others and even just to survive interactions with them, forget connecting. And it was like a shoulder shrug between us. And then I was, that was it. I was no longer welcome to be in the therapy because I was being like obstinate and going, yeah, I know I could quote them back to you, but I can't use them because it's not about that anymore. I don't want to just behave. I want to get better. And
I think that's profound.
So,
because okay, I'm going to try to shrink this for you. Okay, so it's sort of like you're at some sort of a dysregulated, arrested stage of development. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, all right, that you just you're pre-verbal. You don't know what you don't know, and then the therapist is saying, in a sense, well, I don't want to be bothered by digging around with the feeling stuff. Just behave and do as I say, okay? And you're being an obstinate little child, and you're not listening to your parental guidance here, so you don't belong in the program. Okay. So,
great.
So you get the injury here. So the injury is that she missed it with you. She missed the pre-verbal disconnect that led to your inability to grasp a tool that she was giving you, because she didn't address the fact that you needed to heal a certain piece of you to grasp the tool. It's kind of like telling you to walk and talk before you can crawl. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So she's saying, come on, what's the matter with you? Walk, talk, do something, like behave, do what everybody else is doing. And you're like, I don't you get it? I don't know how to do that. Like, okay, well, I'm sorry, you're fired, get out of the therapy, you're not being compliant. Okay, so this is almost like, I'm not saying that it was an inadvertent thing, but she's not really mirroring or attuning to the fact that you're feeling dysregulated and lost, right? And alone. Okay, so no, she's not joining you in your aloneness and saying, geez, I wonder what's going on right now. Tell me more about the dysregulation. Tell me more about your first few years of life, which is where I always want to go. Like, were you breastfed? What was your mom like? Was she a nurturing mom? Was she a cold mom? Was there another parent involved? Was there drug use going on? These are really important questions. You can't just jump to pick up the tool and use it. Pick up, it's almost like I have this image in my mind, like pick up the spoon before you finish breastfeeding. Okay. It's just like, but you get the metaphor, correct?
Yeah, totally. It's a good one. Yeah, I think that's spot on, and it would have been helpful in my case. But in any event, you find there are different paths available. So, and your mind map is a great tool. It's a great system. I haven't had an opportunity to do it with you guys in person, but the resources that you've offered offline are, to all of us for free have been really helpful.
I'm really glad.
And all of these shows that you have every week, this dedication, right on. Thank you very much for sticking with it, because for years I've relied upon Dr. Judy on Thursday night.
Well, I thought I wasn't going to have this Thursday night because I know that there were technical difficulties, but I really appreciate that you hung in there, and hopefully people will catch the episode later, or at a later time, because it'll be uploaded. And then I'm going to be hopefully coming out with my mind map video series titled, if you have a copy of it, if you could post it up there, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. That's the book.
That sounds really good.
There it is, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And I lead people from, through to. It's heavy duty. I spent a lot of time writing it, filming it, and I'm going to spend a lot of time editing it. And if you want more information about it, call, and I can get you oriented with what's about to be released. And of course, you're always welcome to work one-on-one. This video will be a video that you could do either on your own or with a therapist, however you choose to do it. And I'm really excited about it because I think that there are concepts in there. You know, I put a lot of information out there, but this is sort of like bringing it all together into a system, specifically healing the wound of apathy, which is the most painful of all. When your parents simply are missing the empathy chip, that's a killer. It kills your mind, body, soul. So thank you so much for calling in, and for the other caller, I'm sorry if the call didn't quite make it through for the whole call. And feel free to contact the Psychological Healing Center. You're welcome to a free consultation or a full consultation. And please do pick up the book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. So thanks, everyone. And I'll be around next week. Good night.